Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to the Bandana Podcast. I am your host, Sarah, and today I figured I'm studying public health. Why not pretend to be a public health professional for this episode today? So, that's what I'm going to be doing. I've had this idea to do a public health professional acting, I don't know, improv thing for a little bit, but I could never figure out how to do it. My original idea was to look up like public health scenarios and just have me talk through my thought process and yeah, just something like that. But the problem with that was I tried looking up ideas. I tried looking up examples on the internet and I couldn't find any. So here's what I've decided to do. I found an article called Top 10 Public Health Challenges. So I'm just going to be going through this list and I'm going to talk through my thought process on how we can approach these issues. And yeah, that's going to be what this episode is. I hope this episode provides you with some insights into how public health officials approach so many issues that you hear about on a daily basis. So, yeah, let's get into it. I will link this article in the description on my YouTube as well as the description in the episode details. So if you want to just read along and follow along with me, you can do that. The first item on this list is alcohol-related harms. This article is talking about the deaths that have occurred in the US per year, and it is listed as 88,000. Okay, we are starting off hot in this episode because I'm about to give a kind of hot take on this one. I definitely think that there are public health interventions that we can come up with and implement in order to combat alcohol deaths and responsible drinking, but I think no matter what interventions are put in place, it's ultimately up to the culture that influences these alcohol rates. As far as public health interventions go, I think my approach to this would be to implement some sort of system that provides a pretty broad audience with the education that's needed for alcohol safety. And I talk more about this in the first episode of this season, so if you want to hear me delve into that some more, you can go and listen to that episode. Number 2 on the list, food safety. Again, I'm going to give a kind of hot take on this one too. I think the US and whatever levels of government are doing what they can to prevent food safety, but I think in some cases food safety is really ultimately up to the people that are preparing the food in the restaurant or in the home. And the reason I say that is because if we're talking people that assume I'm about to give an anecdote here. Some people I learned assume that pre-washed vegetables and produce are safe to eat. That's not true. I guess I should clarify that last sentence. Not every package that comes pre-washed is safe to eat, and there's absolutely no guarantee that it will be. In this case, with food safety, honestly, I would just say to have some sort of food preparation class available for more people. And I know these types of classes are kind of gone from grade school and primary school, so I think that's something that school districts and boards of educations can think about. I don't know why I said boards of educations. Number 3 on the list, healthcare associated infections or nosocomial infections. On this one, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not that knowledgeable on interventions that can be put in place in order to prevent nosocomial infections, because kind of like the foodborne illnesses, it's ultimately up to doctors and nurses and other healthcare providers to prevent them. So, I mean, they're already going through tedious training, so I think it's ultimately up to how well they sterilize everything. I know that one was kind of disappointing, but I mean, I'd rather be honest than lie or make up something. Next one, heart disease and stroke. This one, as you have maybe heard, is one of the deadliest health conditions that people in the US die from, if not the deadliest. And I know so many interventions have been put in place to prevent this, and is it working? Obviously, not as well as they hoped it would. This issue, along with many of the other issues that I will be talking about in this article, really just need public education because, like I've mentioned in previous episodes, I think education is one of the keys to preventing so many of these issues besides, legislative action. Yeah, that's my response to that one. Just keep educating the public. Oh boy, this next one will involve a lot of discussion from me. HIV. HIV has become a reason for so many homophobic comments, gestures, actions, protests, pieces of legislation, everything. Such homophobic things probably come from the fact that we don't have proper sex education. And sex education can fix two things here. It can fix the culture around HIV and the stigmas that people have developed against gay people, and it can also just give you proper sex education and let people know that HIV does not discriminate and that it can infect anybody and everybody that is coming in sexual contact with each other. Widespread proper sex education is definitely what I would say will have the biggest impact on approaching the HIV. I wouldn't call it an epidemic, but crisis in the US and around the world. But I will say that I do appreciate the many organizations across the country that have come out and provided free HIV testing, spoke out about HIV stigma and how it is spread. And I know at my school, UT Arlington, they partner up with a local, it's called the Help Center, and they're there to provide HIV treatment for free with or without insurance, and it is awesome. Oh dear, number 6, motor vehicle injuries. The description under this item on the list says 1/3 of deaths involve drunk driving and almost another third involve speeding. Again, I think I can tie this to the first item on this list, which was alcohol-related illnesses and deaths, and my first episode in this season of the podcast, responsible drinking. I'm not saying in this episode that I'm leaving it up to everybody to learn on their own, because I know some are unwilling or incapable of doing so, but what I'm trying to say is public health interventions should be implemented that reach a broader audience and explains in a digestible way how to drink responsibly. That way, alcohol is still legal and no one will be complaining, but also it reduces the chance of accidents and illnesses and deaths. Number 7, nutrition, physical activity, and obesity. I think that this kind of relates to one of the earlier items in this list, where I think it really should be a cultural change more than a public health intervention. Of course, public health interventions are very much needed, but I think in addition to those public health interventions, there should be a cultural change in order to really see an impact. Here's what I'm gonna say for this one. I am kind of impressed that so many cities across the country are approaching this issue by providing Narcan availability. If you don't know what Narcan is, it's basically ironically, a drug that reverses the effects of opioid overdoses. So it's kind of like the EpiPen for drug overdoses. It opens the airway and it just prevents you from going out. Of course, I wish that this could be more broad and widespread, but I think some cities are thankfully realizing that this is something that needs to be done and that it's an effective way of approaching it. Okay, guys, we're in the home stretch. Teen pregnancy, number 9. This one is simple. Provide more comprehensive sex ed. I'm looking at you, Republican legislators. Okay, guys, we made it. Number 10, tobacco use. I'm going to take a preventive approach to this one. I think that tobacco use should be approached and addressed by looking at the causes and the reasons why people are using tobacco, and if that includes things like mental health problems and stress problems, then we have to look at other things in society that are causing that. And of course, I know that life cannot be entirely stress free because that's just how it is, but I think we definitely have the ability to reduce and improve upon conditions that are causing stressors in people's lives. Alright, guys, we made it. I think this is probably about to be my longest episode yet. Thank you for sticking around with me to the end if you are listening to this right now, and I will see you next week.